Hi, everyone. I am so excited. Thank you for joining me this Thursday at New Orleans Home Search Podcast. I am here with Taisha Jones from T Realty. Hi, Taisha.
Hi, Ju. Hi, honey. Thanks for having me. And hello, everybody out there in podcast land. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you guys. Today we are talking about the unspoken rules of real estate. But I just want to take one quick second for Taisha just to tell everyone a little bit about you before we jump in on our topic.
Okay. Well, I am Taisha Jones, owner of T Realty. I've been practicing real estate for about 13 years. I'm also a licensed commercial and residential general contractor. So, all things real estate construction, those are my loves.
And I love that you're a female general contractor and you also work in the industry. That is a fantastic quality to have and very rare. So I'm super excited about having somebody with your expertise on the show today. So I really wanted to talk to you guys, and I want you to talk to us too. So if you are watching on Facebook Live, please chime in with your questions or comments, and we'd be happy to help and answer them today. So we're talking about the unspoken rules of real estate, and I was super excited about our exchange of information regarding that because there's tons of things that are customary that we just know working in the industry that the general public wouldn't know. And that was one of my main reasons for starting this podcast to educate the public and let people know about things that you wouldn't know unless you actually work in the industry or unless you go through the situation. And we're here to prevent pitfalls when you're in a real estate transaction. So, Taisha, I'm super excited to dive in. You put some good pointers in the air. Which one did you want to start off with first?
Well, I think it's probably fair if we take them through the process start to finish, especially on the buying side, because that's usually where the mistakes happen, right? Because the buyers are kind of sort of in the driver's seat. So I wanted to start with advice because I feel like buyers begin their journeys online, right? So there's a such thing as solicited advice and unsolicited advice. Typically, when you go to a real estate source or a person who's experienced a transaction or a few transactions, that's your solicited advice, right? Those people who find out that you're just buying a house and they want to say, oh, when I bought my house I only had to come to closing with $500, or when I did this or did that, it's one of those things that'll cause a buyer great anxiety, right? Because you start to think that maybe I should be fitting into a box that somebody else fit in, not really realizing that you can buy a house today and you can buy another one in 2 months, and the journey will be completely different. So I think where you get your advice from is the first stop for a buyer. Like, make sure you're talking to somebody who is current on the trends, kind of in the market, bought a house recently, that sort of thing, versus the buyer from 15 years ago.
And that's great advice. I talk about that. I teach the first time homeowners classes, and that's one of my favorite things. I like telling a story about when you're pregnant and you're having a baby, and everybody has this advice like, oh, well, you hold the baby like this, and oh, back in my day, we did it like that. And times change, things change, and needs change. And every person's situation is different. But just like any other major thing, like having a baby or maybe getting married or going to college, graduating high school, everyone loves to share what it was like when they did it. And it's just important to know that everybody's journey is different. And even as real estate professionals, as I go through my transactions, I'm like, man, this is what my clients go through, and I'm even able to see it from a different perspective for myself. So it's definitely a personal experience. And I totally agree with what you're saying. And I just did a class with Chad, the inspector, and Chad, joked about how the whole family comes to the inspection and dad is at the inspection, checking out things and giving his input on things and how that all works.
Yep, the whole family turns into inspection pros.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
everybody
the
looking
advice
all
is gonna be yes,
exactly. And
ma'am.
the people who have the most opinions have the least amount of contribution. That's the way that
They,
goes.
yeah, they have two cents to give.
Exactly. Two
Yep,
cents.
that's
So
it.
that is ninja. That is perfect. So this is a situation you really want to have a real estate agent or broker that you can trust, because we pretty much walk you through this whole situation, and it's a journey that we go through, and that's why for me and my clients, we turn into family, because by the time we're done with this journey, we'll have went through some things together and made it out. So definitely go to a professional that's current, like Taisha said, on the trends, and trust in them throughout this process.
Well
So what
said.
was yes. So one of the other things was who's who, right? So if you're a buyer and you're in the market and you're just driving up the street and you see the sign out front, the sign and the agent that's on the sign works for the seller. Okay, so I did this question in my first time homeowners class. I'm like, hey, if I work for the seller, do you want to call me and tell me how much you approve for? And everybody's like, no, no. And, I'm messing myself up. And some people were like, well, what's the big deal about that? And I'm like, well, how is your agent able to negotiate on your behalf? And how would you be able to negotiate on your behalf if you're just disclosing your personal information to somebody that doesn't hold your best interest at heart? They hold the seller's best interest. So I think a lot of people just don't realize who's on the sign.
That's an awesome point. I think one of the first things that we do when we have buyers consultations, and it's very, very important, and I think it's one of those things that they kind of graze over, but they shouldn't, is we sit down and we say that this is our agency relationship. I work for you. I work in your best interest. I make things happen on behalf of you. You are my client. But when you're my client, you're also the customer, right? So you are the one going to buy the actual product, the house, from someone else. There's typically the buyer, the seller, and then two agents in the middle. We're the mediators. We have to be able to mediate, but we only can mediate fairly when certain pieces of info are kept in confidence. So if you get on the phone and you call a listing agent from the sign and say, hey, I'm approved for 350, I'm gonna tell my agent call you. They want it all.
Yeah.
They want the whole 350.
Yeah, and then they call me talking about, oh, I called the agent and told her already. Well, told her what?
Because did you help yourself?
Oh no, you did not.
Yeah.
You did not. Don't do it.
Talking
It's
numbers,
tempting as it is.
right? Don't do not stop. As tempting as it is, don't do it. And talking numbers kind of leads us into the next thing we wanted to educate on, and that's about unspoken rules for financing, right? The first thing is that we all play for the same team: the buyer, the buyer's agent, the lender. We all play for the same team, but we have very, very different roles, right? So I get the question often from my buyers. So what interest rate I could get right now? And I'm like, wait, let me explain it to you. I am the person who will act on your behalf to get you the house at the best price possible, right? Best conditions. The person that's the lender is going to help you pay for the house. So all money questions, all finance questions, direct them to the lender. Typically, if you do that, if we make it clear what lanes we run in, then there's less confusion, right? But buyers like
Yeah, and
not.
that's a big point, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I recently talked about this with one of my agents because buyers don't realize I don't know your personal information. I mean, all the personal information I know is what you tell me. And most of the time, my clients tell me everything. And we good to go, and it's confidential, and that's our thing. But there are clients who would like to have their financial information confidential, and that's fine as well. That's a conversation that you're having with the lender. And by law, they cannot share any of your confidential financial information with the agents or anyone else. So just rest assured, no one wants to lose their license or their livelihood behind trying to find out what's going on with you. It's a bigger picture in that, and know that if your realtor is communicating with your lender, it's to get you moving along because we're pretty much the facilitators that are reaching that goal, which is the closing. So we'll all have to work together to get that. But as far as your personal information and what's on your bank account statement and all that, we're not privy to that information. And I don't know about you, Taisha, but I don't feel like looking at my own bank account statement, so I'm not worried about nobody else.
Yes, it's true, but I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because it's somebody out there who has a family member in the real estate industry, and they have been hesitant about moving forward with a transaction with their own family member simply because you think your cousin is going to have access to your tax returns and your bank statements and your check stubs. It's not true. Those things are separate. All money things go to the lender. All good investment, that's us.
Yes, unless your cousin is the lender, work with your cousin because that's
And
who
stop
you can
hiding
talk with.
anyway.
Yeah, who can hold and even if I would love for one of my cousins to become a lender, I'm trying to recruit the whole family into real estate. But I do understand that, and that's a good point. If you're contemplating your realtor, the role of your realtor is look out for your best interest, and nobody's gonna do that like somebody that's a close family member or a friend. And that's why a lot of friends get hurt that are real estate professionals when their friends use somebody else.
Yeah.
And then they want to call you with their questions. No, ma'am, Pam. No,
You're not available for questions, Jew?
no, no. I'm not gonna be able to help you.
So
Sure.
funny.
I got my real clients to talk to.
Yep. The ones who chose you.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's a huge role, and I'm glad that that's one of them that we talked about today. And hopefully, that's something that helps somebody out.
Yes.
Okay. So another rule we wanted to talk to was by talk regarding was buying new versus old. We live in New Orleans, right? It's a lot of old houses. It is what it is. This is our
Yeah.
inventory. This is what we deal with. But we also have some opportunities in some areas outside of our city limits that give us new construction. So as a general contractor, I love having you here, and I just would love to hear your take on some unspoken rules in regards to that.
So I'll be completely transparent and say that we live in a city where the 100-year-old house may very well be more sturdy than the one that was built this year. And the reason is because, from a construction standpoint, building materials have changed drastically, right? So we are in a space where we have man-made everything. So we got curated marble, we got wood that they've blended together to make a hybrid. We're in a space where we've become obsessed with making things pretty versus making it functionally beautiful. So when I encounter clients and they're like, oh, hey, I want the new subdivision, but I can't afford it. And my advice to them is simply this: the tree that they used to build the house that withstood Betsy, Katrina, Ida is going to be still standing. The tree that they blended together, the cousin tree, to make the houses that are in neighborhoods that have no history, and I'll go back to that too. You may not be getting a win all the time. You just have to know what you're giving up to get something else, you know? So
Exactly.
I personally am in favor of the 100-year-old house. Maybe not the 100-year-old house is plumbing, electrical, none of that. But for the person who feels like, oh, I wanted to go to the new neighborhood, but I can afford XYZ, and you could get an older house, rest assured that you very well may be buying quality versus, oh, I want to go to the neighborhood that have, a slide in the middle and a fitness center and this and this and that. And then I'm also one who feels that you have to be careful about buying a neighborhood with no history, because real estate is cyclical. It goes in a circle. When something is cyclical, you can kind of predict the trend that it's going to take, right? When you buy fresh, brand new, like, you at the top, you at the beginning, you don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what natural disasters might make happen. You don't know if these areas are going to be rezoned because it flooded. Like, it's just all of that uncertainty. But at the same time, if you want those amenities and you can afford them, like, it's a personal choice. But I'm in favor of the older houses. I am. How do you
Well,
feel
I
about it?
know one other thing that Chad and I talked about on our session was newer houses and how sometimes the inspection reports are worse for those than on the older houses because there are a lot of things left undone. So I always, I stress so much. Even if it's a new house, still have an inspection. Don't bypass the inspection. I know the builder has the whole blue tape situation for you, and you can physically see imperfections, but the inspector is going to check that electrical. They're going to go on the roof. They're going to check those pipes with a video to see exactly what's going on inside. I had a new construction, and they actually had a paintbrush in the pipe. Because I guess the painter, before they put the toilet down, the paintbrush must have fell down the hole. And he never did anything. I mean, it was just there. They had to dig, take it out. Yes, it was a much. So if we wouldn't have had that inspection, we wouldn't have known they had a paintbrush in the pipes of a brand new house. So it's very important to still do that. But yes, you're right. It's a personal choice. I've seen some new bills with really bad workmanship, and I've seen some new bills that I was trying to figure out how I could buy the house. So it definitely depends on the builder and with what they do, with what they have, for sure, for sure. I love the pictures that are showing up. Guys chime in. I saw that time post up there. Tony said, don't call him. If you're not working with him, don't call him. I hear you. And he is also someone that was on our show. Tony is out of Baton Rouge and Texas, and he's a friend to the show. So thank you, Tony, for chiming in on that. All right, so what was something else that we talked about? Unspoken. Talk.
So we could probably circle back to like just how there's different rules for different loan types, right? So you
Yes.
get buyers and they'll say, I want the 100% financing, or I want the soft second money, or I want it to go like this, or my aunt said it should go this way. And I don't think they realize that a lender is going to take your profile and then tell you what the best fit is, right? So
Yes.
I've had a client who was very, very dead set on, oh, I am going to go USDA. I'm going rural development. I'm doing this because I want the 100% financing perk. So me being an agent, I'm not in finance, and I'm like, look, if you and the lender agree on that, then I'm just gonna fall in line and find the house. Um, Time passes, we get into a deal, and then we discover that being self-employed and the requirements for the rural development is not exactly a profile match, especially if some things have happened as it relates to tax transcripts and blah blah blah, all of that. Long story short, I kind of feel like for the buyer, I know we live in an information age. I know that we deal with the most Google educated people ever. Ask Uncle Google, he will tell you the answer to anything. But I also know that we are in this space and we are the professionals for a reason. Like, walk in the door with trust, choose who you think you're going to build good rapport with, and allow them to work on your behalf. Because had we had that situation from the beginning, the lender would have said to him, like, I'm not trying to change your mind about the 100% financing, but these are the issues we'll face if you go that route being self-employed.
Yes. That's a big point.
So
I
we
mean,
ended up,
being open minded going in. When you're filling out that initial loan application, so everybody's like, what's the first step? What's the first step? Really, the first step is that loan application and turning in all the documents that the lender requires. And once they have all these documents in line, they're wrapping them up in a pretty bow and presenting them to underwriting. And what comes out of that is what you can do. And it's important that us as realtors know the type of loan that you can do, because that aligns us with where your property house can be. Because if it's like Taisha said, a rural development, there's certain areas that you can live in only with a rural development loan. So that's when we start to work together, the lender, the realtor, the buyer, to not only find the best loan that fits, but okay, if you want to live in this area, this is the best loan for you. If you want an older home, you want to live in New Orleans, maybe you can't do FHA. Maybe, the houses in this area just won't pass, but you can do a conventional loan product. So it definitely be open minded, because it depends on the area that you want to live in, the terms of the loan, all these things matter. And regarding the money, so everybody wants to have money. And the money has a higher interest rate. So it's one of those things where you're going to pay the money through the interest rate and your mortgage payment every month. So you have to make that decision. Now, does it make sense to get the money and get the house? Absolutely. Just know that you're going to pay more for your mortgage payment to make up for that. If you know, okay, this is the mortgage payment I feel the most comfortable with, then you might decide, you know what, thank you, but no thank you. I want to go ahead and go the FHA route, put my 3.5% down, and get this lower payment. So it's definitely a situation where you have to be open minded and just very open in disclosing with your lender what's going on with you.
yep, like Pam said, trust the experts.
Yes, Pam, trust the experts, because we've seen it. And even, I mean, I've done deals with loan officers, and they even come across things and they're like, man, I've been in the business, 30 years and I've never seen this, especially during COVID and the guidelines are all changing. So just know that, going back to the advice we talked about, somebody might give you advice based on their experience, but everything changed during COVID and it's changing now every day with interest rates going up. So if you're not doing this every day, it's hard to keep track of what's going on.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yes.
So I
That
had
loan
a
officer. And insurance, that was on our list as well. I definitely don't want to get off without talking about insurance. How
so
has it been working out with you and your clients with insurance?
I actually did a lunch and learn earlier today with Supreme Quality Insurance, and the gist of it was this: in order to insure your home, you have to have the best price coverage mix, right? There's special situations where we may have to take higher deductibles just to get to the closing table, but you better believe that they have to be revamped, because we are in a space where insurance companies are all insurance companies are facing the challenge. We are considered coastal. Um, According to Aisha at Supreme Quality Insurance and Notary, we have the potential, if legislative powers that be don't step in, to see an 18% increase in insurance,
Wow.
specifically flood, every single year for the next decade. So it's one of those things that they are voting and trying to get bills passed to not have that happen. But as it stands now, we've already seen the increase, and it's projected to continue to increase at a rapid rate, 18% a year.
Yes, that is insane. And it really hurts a lot of buyers from getting in there. We already had the flood insurance challenge. And now with the home insurance, it's a lot of companies are leaving Louisiana, and it's really putting us in a bad position for sure. My recommendation is to shop around for insurance. Make sure you're reading everything, because the last thing you want to do is take something off of your policy to save money, and then we have a storm and you need that coverage and it's not available to you. That is the worst thing. Like taking off a roof off a policy to make it lower, it's not worth it, because you better believe if we have a storm, you're probably gonna have to replace your roof. And you want to rely on your insurance to take care of that, because that's what we paid them for. Or make sure you have money on the side, so then if that were to happen, you're ready and you're prepared for sure.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. We don't want you left without coverage. It's not smart. A home is probably going to be the one of the biggest ticket items that we'll ever invest in. So to properly insure it is key.
It definitely is. So definitely don't skip out on the insurance. And I'm so glad you did that lunch and learn today. What else did y'all learn about insurance?
Oh my God. So I had already experienced the need to assume flood policies that were already in place. Um, but just knowing that we will see increases at that rate, it was alarming, right? Because already natives are being forced out of the actual city because we're being priced out of our own neighborhoods. It's just a lot. It's a lot with it, and I can share contact info for her for anybody who has specific insurance related questions. But it was alarming to learn that we're going to pay so much more for insurance, which means a lot of people are going to be buying less house just because of that.
Yes, and I'm glad you spoke to the less house. And because as realtors also, our responsibility is to set expectations for our clients. So, a lot of them are online shopping, and prices are outrageous. So that's first thing. I think the benefit to them online shopping is just you can see for yourself, what's going on. Clients know for themselves, oh, wait, I saw this listing came up Monday and now Tuesday is gone. So I don't have to tell them that the market is hot. They see for themselves because they're online. But there are some sites y'all just got to stay off.
Call it out.
Stay off Zillow, okay? Put it down. Zillow is not your friend.
Appraisal,
All
not
good.
Zestimate.
If you want to drive your realtor crazy, send a listers from Zillow all day.
I think what they don't realize that we send them portal links for the system that's updated when we are updated, right? And then they
Yeah,
still shop the third party sites, which are fine. The Realtor, the Redfin, the Zillow, those are fine, but they're not updated as often as the MLS. So if a buyer is searching there exclusively and not in their own portal that we create, you typically sending us houses that have been gone a day and a half, 2 days. You see it, you love it, you want to
exactly.
see it.
Either that or they're not in the criteria that we discussed that you wanted. So that could be, something too. So just know I have an app, New Orleans Home Search app, just like this New Orleans Home Search podcast. You can go on New Orleans Home Search app, search any listing in Louisiana. You can contact a realtor directly from the app, ask questions, pull up the mortgage calculator, look up schools. It's a tool for you. Please use it. I love it. But yeah, the also Zillow's job is to provide inventory uh for their site. So the most of the inventory is not even on the market. So clients will send property, and I'm like, it'll say it's small, like you have to, but I can see it because I know where to look, and I'm like, oh, it's off the market. I'm not gonna even check on that MLS. I can see it here, So most of the time, it's just clickers. They just want you to click there, and they'll just post any house just for you to click. And most of the time, it's like a grain deal that doesn't exist, like a mansion for $1. That's not right.
Not
You
a
know,
dollar.
yeah, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. Or the
But I think they
Zestimate.
don't.
The
Yes, I think they don't
Zestimate.
realize that Zillow is a lead capture system too. So they just want your info.
They just want your information so they can sell it to realtors that buy it, and they just keep doing it over and over again to y'all. So that's unspoken, and we just spoke it. So I hope you
So now
guys
you know.
now you know. If you didn't know, now you know. Stay off Zillow. You behind. You behind. So I'm so glad you came on today, Taisha. This is like such good information that I think people need to know and enjoy, and us having fun with it. I wanted to bring
Yeah.
up lastly before we end Zestimate on that Zillow topic. What's been your experience with Zestimate? How many times has Zestimate been correct?
It's never correct because estimate is like a my credit karma. Like it's always off. I mean, man. That's why I say appraisal and not estimate. It's almost like they want to inflate it just for the sake of having a conversation piece. Because when you get a real appraisal, you're like, why my house is 60,000 less than what Zillow said? Because who said ask Zillow?
Right. Or
It's
the internet
estimate.
in general. Really, I'm gonna tell you this. This is why they can't though. To create the algorithm would be just impossible, especially in New Orleans, simply because we have same streets that are different. So it can be the same street and you cross one block and it changes in the whole landscape of it. It can be the same zip code. You can't do it by zip code. You can't do it by street. a lot of times you have to do it specifically by house. And I know because I've like dedicated myself to this, like I'm interested in it. When houses sell, I want to know how much it's sold for. If I'm driving around, I'm like, I bet this house is worth this, or I bet this house is worth that. That's just how my brain works. So I know that there's no way, because I would have figured out the algorithm by now. There's no way to figure it out in New Orleans. Maybe other places, but here it's definitely not gonna work.
It's impossible because the concept of a subdivision is not something that we embody. Like almost all
Yeah,
of our neighborhoods are mixed use properties. So you're gonna get commercial and residential mixed on the same street. You may even get a dilapidated building in a mansion next door. So that's why it's
yeah,
impossible. Because we have apples and oranges next to each other.
we definitely do. I love our city though.
Me too. Me too. I
I
wouldn't
love
have it
our
any other
little
way.
mixed up puzzle.
Look, gumbo streets.
Yes, exactly. I love our gumbo street. And
Yep.
you know what? Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad that you don't know that if you're just a regular person. There's professionals that don't know. So don't feel like that's some information that you should, have answers to. There's appraisers that don't know. There's appraisers from other parts that come here. I've had appraisals. I just had one for the ninth ward, a 4-bedroom house. She appraised it like 140. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with her? And then we looked her up. She was from Monroe. I'm like, okay, well, Monroe, you need to send somebody out from New Orleans because she don't know what she's talking about. The next appraisal we had was somebody from New Orleans, and that same house appraised for 195. So you tell me what's the difference between 140 something and 195. It was outrageous. So definitely professionals make that same mistake.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. I'm glad you said that because I actually got interviewed for this short film coming out called NIMBY. Not in my backyard. So it talks about how different different appraisals will come back different, same house, same person, just because of culture, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
So it's about a couple who they get their house appraised, appraiser comes, they give them a low appraisal. 8 months later, they have a friend, Asian friend, to come in and stand in as owner to meet the appraisal. And this is how the film goes, right? And meet the appraiser and get an astronomical increase in the value of the home. Mind you, no renovations have occurred, right? And the guy who interviewed me for the short film, he said, "Have you experienced that?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest, D, this is something that, I tell my sellers, and it's a real thing. And I would like for all of the agents watching to chime in on this one. I advise my sellers to make the house as blank as possible. Take your photographs off the wall. Don't let anything about the judgment for this house be based on the person. Take out your photographs. If you got dinka masks, put them in the closet, and let's just see what happens. Because I've had, case in point, I had two houses on the same street, and this is a team that had the houses. One, and this is a couple team, and they don't share the same last name. So Acevedo was the appraised first house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alawagbi is the last name for the second house. Second house completely renovated. Alawagbi is clearly African. And the first house got a better price per square footage than the one that was completely renovated top to bottom, two houses down, right on Carol Soup. One here, two houses down. So I don't know, and Pam, if you're listening, Sam, I saw you chime in. Hey, Sam, honey,
Hey,
have you
Sam.
guys experienced just a difference in appraised value based on culture? Because I know I've experienced it, and apparently it's a thing that's a big enough thing for a short film to be made about it. So, what about
Definitely.
you? You have you encountered anything like that?
Well, I mean, that situation, that property was actually vacant at the time. But I mean, it was in a ninth ward, so I do think that because it was in a predominantly black neighborhood, that it was judged in that way. But somebody that was from here, even if they weren't from the ninth ward, would know uh, that just didn't make sense. So yeah, of course. And I tell my clients the same thing: take everything down, even religious things like crosses and their Jesus. Even though I love the Lord, I'm like, Lord, forgive us, but we gotta take it out. We gotta take it out, and just like you said, make it a clear slate. So when the buyers come in, thinking, okay, this is where this is gonna go, or this is where that's gonna go, and they're picturing themselves in the property versus your things being in the property. And I love this topic. Is one of my favorite topics because I love history. And one thing we talked about in a CE class I went to was how a lot of deeds still have in them do not sell to blacks or coloreds, and that was a big part of our history. And still today, when properties are sold, that's coming up in deeds. Now, of course, they're not enforcing them, but just to know that you're buying a property that was once a rule for, it just makes me want to look all of them up and buy them all,
Give
paint
them
them
to me,
black.
all of
Paint them black.
them. Listen, they didn't want to let us in the door, so we bought the doors. We bought the buildings.
We did.
Yeah.
We did, absolutely. And I'm so proud of you because now you building the doors.
Lady builder.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Taisha. We got to have you back on the show. And everybody listening, I hope you learned something. I hope you had some fun with us. And just know, Sam, yes, I always advise my clients to make their house really neutral. Yes, that is great advice. So I hope y'all got some good advice from us or from anybody that chimed in. And if you need more information, feel free to reach out. And thank you for joining New Orleans Home Search Podcast.
Bye, y'all.
Yeah.